So in this video, we're going to talk about trigonometry when obtuse angles are involved. Now, typically when we've been doing trigonometry, we've been dealing with acute angle triangles. So all of the triangles basically will have our angles from 0 to 90 degrees. Now, typically when we take sine, cos, and tan of any angle that's acute, we are going to get a positive value. You can try this for the values in your calculator. You'll always get a positive ratio. Now, when we start looking at obtuse angles, so obtuse angle triangles, so degrees from 90 degrees to 180 degrees, we get a few different things happening. Now, the sine, when we take an angle that's obtuse, will always be positive. When we take the cos of an angle that's 90 to 100 degrees, it'll be negative, and tan will be negative as well. Now, there's a reason for these, but that will come up in the advanced course. So this is outside of the scope of Year 12 Standard 2 in maths in the New South Wales syllabus. So we are just going to leave these there. Basically, this entire video and chapter from at least the Cambridge textbook is a lot of just calculator work. So we're just inputting things into a calculator and making conclusions about our angles and our trigonometric ratios. But this that I've highlighted is just how sine, cos, and tan behave for obtuse angles. Now, example 1, this is just asking us to input into our calculator. So it's saying to find the value of the following obtuse angles, correct to 2 decimal places. Now, to find this, we just have to press the sine button in our calculator, then we have to put this value in. And once we do this, this gets you about 0.2714, and it just continues on. And to 2 decimal places, we just have 0.27. Now, this checks out that we got a positive answer because this is the sine of this angle, so we expect a positive answer because obtuse angles, when you take the sine of them, they will be positive. Now, for the next one, we have tan of this value here, so 124 degrees and 30 minutes. Now, just a note on when you're putting this into a calculator, you press the tan button, then you're going to write in 124. You're going to type in 124, and then you're going to use that button that we dealt with in the previous couple of videos, so where we have our degrees, minutes, and seconds. Now, we need to push this button after we write in 124 because that signifies to our calculator that we are dealing with that part, 124, is our degrees. Then, in our calculator, when we input it, we write our 30, and then we press this button again to tell our calculator that this 30 is dealing with the minutes part here. So we have to do that when we're inputting degrees and minutes and seconds into our calculator. So these here are the steps that you would take to input that in. Now, once we get that, that gives you, once you put that in, it will give you negative 1.46. I've already rounded that just to 2 decimal places. So when you put this into a calculator, because tan is negative from 90 to 180, your answer will be negative 1.46. Now, moving on to the next examples, it's saying that given cos theta equals negative 0.5178, find the value of theta to the nearest degree. Now, what that means is if we are to put this into our calculator, so if we want to find our theta, we are going to take the inverse cos of this value here, negative 0.5178. So when you put that into your calculator, you will notice that you get an obtuse angle, right? So you will get 121 degrees to the nearest degree. So we expect that, right? Because the trig ratio is negative, so we would expect the theta, the value of that, because cos is negative for obtuse angles, we would expect this to be an angle between 90 and 180, which it is. So it checks out with what we've been talking about so far. Now, part B, we have that tan theta equals to negative 1.32. To find theta, we have to take the inverse tan of negative 1.32. And we get, this is saying to the nearest minute. Now, this will give you, and you put in your calculator, 127.1466, etc. Now, remember, your calculator, when you are finding an angle, it will always give you something in decimal places. From here, we have to press that button. So on our answer, once we get that, we press this button in our calculators. I'm using an older kind of Casio calculator. You should see a button that looks like this. This button allows you to convert to degrees, minutes, and seconds. Now, to the nearest minute, that will give you 127 degrees and 9 minutes. But this is how we can use our calculators to work with obtuse angle trigonometry. But this will come up a lot more in the later videos, and the background of this, if you'd like to know why this part here is the case, eventually when the advanced course gets recorded, you'll be able to get a kind of background of that there. But for now, we don't need to know why, we are just working with it. And this section is really just calculator work. But thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.